Eric Prince has spoken about this on Breitbart News right before the election in 2016. I believe Hillary was mentioned on that on those flight logs 6 or 7 times going on the press to pedophile. I think this is why you're starting to see people distance themselves, and it would not surprise me, Sean, if we start to see some medical issues arise with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton in the near future.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Thank you so very much for tuning in. A shout out to my patrons and a very special thank you also to one of this channel's sponsors, Virtual Shield. You know, if you're not using a VPN by now on your desktop, tablet, or mobile device when you browse the internet, you're really exposing yourself to danger, guys. At some point, you have to get a VPN. But what is a VPN? It's a virtual private network that allows you to create a secure connection to another network over the internet. Check it out. I'll show you how this works. You can see me here on my website, thelibertymill.com. I've already installed Virtual Shield. I just go up to this little icon, the shield up there in the upper right-hand corner. I click it, and then I connect to Virtual Shield. And now you can see that my IP address says that it's coming from Chicago, Illinois. I don't live anywhere near Illinois. So that's how a VPN works. Very simple to do. Go to virtualshield.com and download the free 30-day trial and install it, then just click connect like I just showed you. This month, Virtual Shield is offering a 4th of July celebration special of 20% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance plans for as low as $3 a month. So sign up for your free 30-day trial. Protect your personal data now with a VPN. Try Virtual Shield. I'll leave the link below this video. This is going to be a very important update with Dr. Dave Janda from Operation Freedom on YouTube. You know, his website is davejanda.com. If you want to support him, there is a subscription side to that website, which I think is very smart given YouTube's increasing fascism against those of us in the truth media. But there's also a free side at davejanda.com. And of course, all of his material is absolutely free on Operation Freedom on YouTube, an excellent YouTube channel. He's broadcasting out of Michigan every single day. Dave Janda joins us now. How are you, Doc?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thanks again for having me on your platform, and thanks again for all that you do. You are truly on the front edge, front line of fighting this war against the deep state.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, so many of us are. You know, you can name the names on YouTube and across the alternative news media, and we're all under attack by the fascists at Google and YouTube. And guess what? It's not just a right-left thing, Dave. It's quickly becoming evident that Google's more than happy to target people on the left like Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, who is now suing Google for $50 million for playing games right after that Democratic presidential debate in which she was the person with the most interest, the most buzz on the internet. And Google didn't like that because she's not a chosen leftist Marxist like Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or some of the others. So they took away her AdSense account for 6 hours, and she couldn't reach potential new voters and get her message out. So she's suing them for $50 million, and I think it's great news.
Well, here's the bottom line, Sean. You've been on this issue for several years, and you dissected the fact that there are voices that are being suppressed. And you know better than anybody with your channel being taken down, and then the recent issues you just went through with getting almost taken down yet again. You know, we've had a similar problem, not getting taken down at Operation Freedom, but I noticed a change. Now, first of all, Sean, when you and I started talking about this at Operation Freedom, it took us 15 months to get monetized. 15 months, okay? Once we have gotten monetized, which was not that long ago, initially our videos were getting monetized. I noticed our view count wasn't as high as it was before we got monetized. Now, maybe that was just the timing. But one of the things we found, Sean, and this has actually escalated over the past, I would say, we noticed starting in January, but we really noticed a big change starting in the beginning of the month of July. And in fact, we ran a little experiment because on July 9th, I posted a video on YouTube that was entitled The 7 Pieces of Information the Deep State Does Not Want You to Know and Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, great video, by the way. Great
Well,
video. Let me just say one thing, too, housekeeping for the audience. Guys, this is a very, very important interview. We're going to just spend a little bit of time here about the censorship thing, but then we're going to talk about very important stuff. Mueller's bomb testimony. I mean, it was absolute turd. Epstein, Little St. James, Great St. James, and Zorro Ranch. We're going to talk about chemtrails, SB2 decodes to some degree. So much to talk about in this interview, so stay tuned. But getting back to your censorship test.
Well, that, as you know, I uploaded the video on a Monday and it was going to go public Tuesday morning. It was immediately demonetized, right? So what was in there? Well, I was concerned, where was I getting knocked off? What was it about the 7 piece of information, or was it about the Epstein issue? So the next week, I did another video, uploaded it, called President Trump's Secret Weapon Against the Deep State. Put it up, Sean, and you've seen this before, immediately yellow, limited to no monetization. So before we released it to the public, what I did is I took it down, and my IT gurus split it into 2, a part 1 and a part 2. And in part 1, we had the part about President Trump's peace initiative, and in part 2, we had it about Epstein and his linkage with the intelligence agencies.
They're running cover for him. They're running cover for pedophiles, David.
Oh, I completely agree with you, Sean. And you know what? This is what gets us demonetized, because this is the experiment we did. Because I spoke about Epstein and the pedophile networks, and I spoke about the linkage to the CIA, to Mossad, to MI6, with Robert Maxwell, with Belinda Maxwell and the like, right? So we uploaded part 1, which was the peace initiative part. And guess what? Green light, right? And when it was released the next morning, green light stayed green light. The second part with the Epstein pedophile networks, human trafficking, linkage to the intelligence agencies, put it up immediate, Sean, immediate. Now remember, this is the same video that was in one whole piece. We split into immediate, yellow, limited to no monetization. When we released it, same thing, stayed there. So the bottom line is that it appears if you speak about Epstein, pedophile networks, intelligence agencies linked to Epstein, you're getting demonetized. The message being, we're going to censor you. We're going to starve you out, which all of us have faced, where they say, you know what, if we keep starving you out, you'll realize what the block is, and you'll shut up about it.
Right.
Well, what they don't realize, Sean, is people like you and myself and a number of other people, we're not going to shut up about it, because it's important for the American public and the world public to know the facts and what's going on. Information, the bought-off mainstream fake media, which is a tentacle of deep state, will never touch.
Well, that's 100% right. Can you see a screen share on your end?
I can. I see Jim Jordan, great guy, and I see Robert Mueller, not a great guy.
Yeah, and what I want to play for you here is the good news. And the good news is, well, nobody says it better than Jim Jordan in this clip, because that Mueller debacle, that's what it was. Mueller's testimony was an absolute debacle for the Democrats, and even the Democrats in the leftist mainstream mockingbird horror media is lamenting his poor performance. He couldn't even stand behind his own quote-unquote report. Makes you wonder who actually wrote it, doesn't it, Dave? Listen to this, because here's the good news as it relates to Joseph Misfud lying to the FBI and Christopher Steele potentially lying to the FBI, which Mueller said was beyond his purview. What was the purpose of this whole witch hunt then? Well, I think we know. So does Jim Jordan.
Maybe a better course of action is to figure out how the false accusation started. Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Misfud was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news. Here's the good news. That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing. They're going to find out why we went through this three-year saga and get to the bottom of it.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
That's exactly what John Durham and Bill Barr are doing. Dave, they don't want this truth coming out, but guess what? The dam is breaking. It's breaking in the pedophile arena. It's breaking in the deep state CIA intelligence arena, trying to topple our president. It's breaking with the Clinton treason. I think she's in a lot of trouble right now. I can share a tweet with you later that I shared last night. Unbelievable stuff happening. The Obamas are deleting all of their emails and retweets related to Hillary. I mean, something big is brewing, and it's all coming out.
I agree with you. Now, one thing about that Robert Mueller testimony that can also be characterized as a goat rodeo. A lot of credit to Jordan. A lot of credit to Doug Collins, congressman from Georgia. A lot of credit to Devin Nunes in the afternoon session, to Louis Gohmert, to Matt Gaetz. But I think the star of the show, Sean, was John Ratcliffe. And he exposed what a sham this entire Mueller, Weissman investigation report was. Now, I have a little different take. I looked at it as a physician watching Mueller, right? And there were inconsistencies. For example, there were at the beginning of the testimony. Now, might I say, even before the testimony, I watched it on Fox. Judge Napolitano, who has gone way far south on the freedom movement about a year or so ago.
Yeah, he has.
Right? Oh, yeah. And boy, I'll tell you, Sean, I have gotten such grief for pointing out how Fox is controlled opposition. I don't mean Hannity or Ingram or Tucker Carlson. I'm talking about the management of Fox and some of these personalities at Fox like Napolitano. I think it was made clear. And nobody's talking about this, but I was watching Fox, and before Mueller's testimony, this is a direct quote from Napolitano. Robert Mueller has testified 89 or 90 times before Congress. He's a brilliant man, and you will see, here it is, that during the testimony, the smartest guy in the room is Robert Mueller.
Yeah, well, check this out. You'll recall that the rumor is Napolitano lobbied the president to be one of the candidates. He wanted to be on the Supreme Court. Our president said nope. So, and at the time, I was a pretty big Napolitano fan. You know, you go back a few years ago, and Napolitano was right in there. I was thinking Ron Paul could have named him as VP when Ron Paul was running for president. I liked Napolitano. And
yeah,
you're right, but it makes you wonder, and it makes you also wonder what this president knows, because when Napolitano was sort of lobbying to maybe be a candidate for the Supreme Court, President Trump said nope.
Yeah, Napolitano has flipped. And at the beginning of the test, so then they go to the testimony, and Nadler, deep state player, does his little intro, and then he starts asking these quick questions to Mueller. Now, if you notice at the beginning, Mueller started answering each question before Nadler was finished asking each question, which was indicative, at least to me, that this was a rehearsed witness. Okay, this was a pre-prepared witness, Mueller. As it went on, and it didn't take very long, it became very obvious that Mueller was confused. He was, what else you want to call it? You want to call it lost. He was inattentive. He was disoriented. At times, there are times he was quicker. Now, as a physician looking at it, it didn't add up, because there are people out there, Sean, that are saying Robert Mueller has dementia. Okay, look, I went through medical school, internship, residency, fellowship, 32 years of clinical practice as a physician, as a surgeon, and I could not make that diagnosis. There's something with his testimony that was off, and I go back to my upbringing in the city of Chicago. I grew up in the southwest suburbs, had a family in the south side of Chicago, spent a lot of time on the south side of Chicago on the streets, and also in another little area on the southwest side called Cicero. Probably the most famous inhabitant of Cicero in the past was Al Capone. There's a saying on the south side of Chicago that when criminals get in trouble, they develop a disease called the Sicilian flu. Now, I'm not taking a whack at the Italian folks or Sicilians, but what is meant by that is, in a courtroom, a great defense, which has played out thousands of times, not just in Chicago, but around the country, the person being charged all of a sudden gets confused, gets disoriented, gets lost. And the ultimate result of that is the jury going, hey, this person's so out of it, they couldn't possibly be involved in this. There's obviously somebody else behind the curtain. And I think there was in his case, but the point is that 2 years ago, Sean, I got a lot of grief because on my platform, my sources came to me and said, Dave, this whole issue of Robert Mueller getting named special counsel, a lot of people are out there, the vast majority, Sean, people are out there saying Mueller is going to indict the President Trump. President Trump is going to leave in disgrace. He's going to be impeached. This is it. Mueller is a horrible deep state player, which he was and is, but still. And Trump is no match for Mueller. He's gone. And I came out, and my sources came to me and said, Dave, he is a black hat. In fact, they related information to me. The reason why I call him Mueller and not Mueller is because he was a mule for the deep state. In 2009, according to my sources, he was involved in the transfer of a sample of uranium to Moscow through a private plane while Obama was president for the Russians to take a look at the grade of the uranium coming through in the Uranium One deal. Black hat. Plus, he was involved in many deep state operations prior to that.
Well, and the cover-up of 9/11 and what really went down in 9/11. So, yeah. But I think
the director when they have. So here's the point.
He lost his political mandate and his political backing of the deep state. The deep state, I think, has been neutered to the extent that there's not much he can do because the house of cards is coming down. Because I think I'm gonna share a tweet with you here in a second, and then a Q post, because I think it speaks very, very succinctly to what is happening and how bad things are now getting for both the Obamas and the Clintons, the heart of the deep state. And it weren't saying that with Bush Sr. dead, that's when the real house of cards started coming down. And that's why Mueller lost his mandate and his political backing by the deep state, my opinion.
Well, one of the things my sources pointed out is, Dave, and they said, Dave, you have to focus on this and remember this. The day before Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel, he had over a 4-hour meeting with President Trump. And here's what they said. This is going back. Dave, do you believe it possible that Mueller was presented with knowledge of his past deep state acts and activities, which could well have, if you will, not flipped him, but diminished his alliance with the deep state to the point that not that he became a white hat. My sources never said that. I never said that 2 years ago. But what they did say is, Dave, out of that meeting, do you believe it's a possibility that Robert Mueller switched from being a black hat, not to a white hat, but to a gray hat, and was going to play both sides against the middle, and his primary goal was to extricate himself from this entire process? And if you look at his behavior with the Sicilian flu during this testimony, Sean, the bottom line is what's happened. Well, what's happened is, number one, my sources were correct 2 years ago, and we got a lot of grief for it. We were accused of being Trump apologists. We were Trump zealots. We were feeding hopium to people that Trump wouldn't be indicted. What happened? Trump didn't get indicted. Mueller discredited himself, and in the process, extricated himself where everybody's now going, wait a minute. Who's behind him? Who's really doing this? It couldn't have been that guy because he's too feeble. Great play of the Sicilian flu by Mueller on July 24th.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, Mueller, I think you're right. I think maybe he just needed to, he was fighting for his own survival in this thing, right?
Because it was all about him.
Well, and because none of the facts were on their side, as came out in this testimony, he literally says, looking into Christopher Steele's dossier and whether or not Steele was lying and the dossier was phony was, quote, beyond my purview. Well, what the hell was his purview for this thing other than to find out the truth, all of which hinged on this phony dossier?
Well, and that line is critical, and Ratcliffe jumped on it. Because when he says, how many times, Sean, as you mentioned, did he say it's outside my purview? What does that mean? That what he's saying is, hey, I'm kind of moving out of here, but you might want to look at these other guys, right? Well, you know what? We should have been looking at these other people surrounding Mueller long before that hearing on July 24th. Not that the bought-off lamestream fake media would do it. We were in the alternative media. But finally, the American public, after they saw this event occur on July 24th, started saying, wait a minute. What's going on behind the scenes here?
Right.
And Ratcliffe said it himself about this outside my purview. This was part of the deal. Ratcliffe explained this is why Barr, who has tasked U.S. Attorney John Durham to lead the so-called investigation of the investigators, must fill in the gaps. Now, the things that Bob Mueller said he didn't know about and his team clearly didn't look at, those are things that would be fair for Bill Barr and the Department of Justice to look at, because we know that things happened to the Obama administration that haven't been answered. There's no accountability for that yet. That's what Radcliffe said. And then he went on, the American people, they want that. Their faith and trust has been shaken in our Justice Department. Yeah. And the only way to get that back is there to be real accountability with a very fair process.
Yeah.
Boom.
Boom.
And then he jumps into, relevant to the Barr-Durham review is Horowitz's Inspector General investigation into alleged government surveillance abuses against at least one advisor for Trump's campaign, Carter Page. Sean, you've taken grief, I've taken grief when we said, look, Michael Horowitz, yes, he was appointed by Obama, but if you watch his testimonies before Congress when Obama was still president, he was going after Obama and the fact that he was being silenced through Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. Many people have said nothing's going to happen with Horowitz. Many things have already happened with Horowitz. Just look at his first report as it related to the emails. And now he's going to come in on the FISA abuse. I agree with Radcliffe. I think Horowitz is playing against the deep state. And I do believe this appointment now of Radcliffe as Director of National Intelligence is a great one and a power move for the president.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know what? It's being said right now, when this thing is all over, the Obamas will be back in Kenya where they belong. Listen to this. I saw this tweet last night and I retweeted it. Now, I haven't vetted this out yet because I saw this past midnight last night. But let's assume it's true, because then I'm going to share something from Q. This is from Surfer Mom 77 Sophia on Twitter. Something big must be brewing. Everybody who is anybody is backing away from Hillary. Warren, Brazil's, and now Michelle deleted all Hillary-related tweets on her feed going back to 2013, just 5 days ago. Obama deleted Hillary's tweet and also stopped following her. Now check out this post from Q, guys. Post 3532, July 28th. The swamp runs deep. DNC servers hold many answers, guys. Think Seth Rich. Scaramucci model, DNI and NSA. Awan in brackets, DWS, Debbie Wasserman Schultz in brackets, D_Congress in brackets, all a house of cards. You didn't think the plea deal was the end, did you? Q. Dave, I think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, first of all, let's talk about the DNC server. Let's talk about where all of the answers could have easily been found by Robert Mueller had he looked at the server, which the DNC said, nope, you don't get access to. And I guess the FBI just said, oh, okay, that's fine.
Well, not right. And not only that, as we know, CrowdStrike only submitted a tentative report, right? The FBI, the special counsel's office never saw the server. There was this half-baked report from CrowdStrike, who was employed by the DNC, right, to provide this not even formalized report about how it was hacked. Look, you've had Bill Binney on your platform. He's a friend of yours. Bill Binney's a friend of mine, as is Kirk Wiebe. I've had them on my platform numerous times. Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe, they were the only two witnesses that Robert Mueller needed to question, right? Because they assembled a team. The two most famous, well-known experts in the world in surveillance platforms, Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe. They assembled a team, and they revealed, and they found, after investigation, that from, again, looking at data and facts, that there was no way that could have been a hack into the DNC server. It was an internal download, and that internal download was then transferred, like on a thumb drive, to Julian Assange for publications through WikiLeaks. Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe unequivocally came to that finding. They were never asked to testify in front of Mueller or in front of Congress, for that matter. The bottom line is that everybody can make up all these speculations and all these scenarios. The data doesn't lie. And the data shows this was not a hack of the DNC server.
It was all downloaded locally. Now, see, but that's the reason I bring it up, because it's clear. Look, We're
Yes.
preaching to the choir. Robert Mueller didn't care about the truth any more than the Mockingbird mainstream horror media cares about the truth. And the truth all hinges on that story that the DNC server, the Podesta emails, the Clinton emails were all hacked by Russians, which can be provably disproven simply by looking at the DNC server, which Mueller refused to do because the DNC said, nope, you can't have access to it. If the DNC cared about truth, they would have well, if it was true, which it's not, they would have happily, gleefully turned over the server that would have backed their story. But it doesn't. And in my opinion, and in the opinion of Kim.com, and in the opinion of probably Julian Assange, the insider, the leaker, was Seth Rich. And to this day, if you say that, the mainstream media will call you a lunatic, a conspiracy theorist. But guess what? The conspiracy was all happening within the DNC to stack the deck for Hillary against Bernie. And the hardcore Democrat, Seth Rich, saw what was going on. He was disgusted by the criminality in his own party, a party that he thought he stood for. And so he wanted the truth to come out. And I think they whacked him for it. So if we go back to that Q post, DWS in brackets there regarding the DNC server, I think there may be a whole lot going on right now behind the scenes as it pertains to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who controlled the DNC. She was the chair at the time of all this going down. And recall, it was John Podesta. We have his leaked email saying, I'm all for making an example of the leaker. And then Seth Rich was murdered, and that murder is still unsolved.
Well, you're right on target. And let's add a little fuel to that fire, where I believe Ed Butowski recently filed a lawsuit and about this whole issue with Seth Rich and what's going on with him. And he cites not someone who you could consider a conservative. I believe her name is Ellen Ratner, who is also on Fox.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, my picture pops up, and it's like, I go, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, here's where I lost you. Guys, I just got cut off mid-conversation. This is happening more and more with Zoom. So I can't even use Skype anymore because it happens constantly. So Zoom has been very stable for me. But now lately I'm having trouble with Zoom. Now, I lost you when you literally were saying the words, I think, Ellen Ratner, who was on Fox. So we can pick it up from there. But I just want people to know, I got booted off of Zoom. Then I went to my sent emails to find the exact Zoom link, because I do these things so many times every week. I want to find the exact same link so we could both rejoin. And my email that I sent to you today with the Zoom link is gone. It's not in my sent file. So look, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm glad to have Dr. Dave Janda back. Do you want to pick it up from there, Ellen Ratner?
I guess we're over the target.
I guess. But I mean, literally, I keep getting knocked off of Zoom. I did a conversation the other day with John Barber and Donald Jeffries, which is unusable because we got kicked off of Zoom 3 times in the internet. I mean, I don't know. So anyway, you could pick it up from Ellen Ratner, who was on Fox. But I want people to know, we're going to wrap this up, then we're going to talk briefly about Epstein, and then I want to talk a little bit about chemtrails.
Oh, yeah. So Ellen Ratner. So many people say, oh, Seth Rich, like outside in People's Republic of Ann Arbor here, oh, that's conspiracy theory. No, it might be conspiracy, but it's fact. Ed Bukowski recently filed a suit, and he states in this suit that he spoke with Ellen Ratner, who is not a conservative, at Fox, and she said she had a multiple-hour meeting with Julian Assange, and Julian Assange told her in no uncertain terms the source of the information was that he published about the emails was not the Russians, but came from Seth Rich.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, yeah, right.
Well, Kim.com was willing to testify to Mueller.
Right. Well, they didn't want to hear him either, right?
All right, so we'll move on, but we'll move on. But I think it's really clear who the DNC leaker was, and I think it's really clear. President Trump says it time and time again. He said it recently. The enemy of the people, aside from the deep state, is the Mockingbird mainstream media. They refuse to actually do journalism, and they refuse to tell the truth because they're sold-out globalists who lament that their little witch, their Hillary Clinton, isn't in the White House. Evidently, according to these crazy people, Dave, all would be fine with this country if the witch was sitting in the White House instead of this man who actually seems to care about this country. That's what blows me away. And I hear the same thing. It's still coming from these people, like the Mark Maron podcast. Just about every podcast, he laments the fact that the country's gone crazy, we're all a bunch of racists, and we have a criminal sitting in the White House. His words. And it always begs the question to me, who did he think Hillary was? He would have just been fine with a hardcore globalist criminal, a Rothschild puppet sitting in the White House? These people are also intellectually dishonest. It makes me want to puke.
Well, they're also all bought and paid for. right? That's what it comes down to. When you hear somebody start speaking about that with Hillary Clinton's track record, when you hear somebody speaking in that manner, it's very easy. That person is owned by the syndicate. They have some type of leverage on that person. And what fame they have obtained is because of their allegiance and alliance with deep state players.
Yeah, I think you might be right. And look, I covered this recently with my guest, Crow 777, Joe Rogan. All right, we don't have to go there now, but what a sellout. Most recently, he did this podcast with his comedian friend Duncan Trussell. And Joe Rogan, who previously had a lot of questions about NASA and their history, was literally in this podcast wearing an orange NASA jumpsuit, making fun of Christians, etc. I've just had it with these people. You're right. They've sold out for their ad dollars.
Yeah, I think there comes a point in time with some of these folks and a good example is what we're going to talk about now with Epstein. Somewhere along the line, these folks have been compromised. And it's certain people at certain phases, that compromise card is thrown in front of them. And this is why I think we see a number of people who we initially thought were okay, thought were fighting for the freedom movement, I think this is why we start to see these metamorphoses or this chameleon-like behavior where they all of a sudden flip and they turn.
Yeah.
And I truly believe it goes back to leverage. You know, a conversation I had when I first got to Washington working on healthcare policy I got there in 1988. I believe this conversation happened in 1989, so 30 years ago. I asked a very prominent political figure about what percentage of folks were compromised, blackmail, bribery in DC. And the answer given to me, this is 89 now, 99%.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this. Let's talk about Epstein briefly, and then we'll wrap it up with a discussion about the skies and geoengineering. So I'm going to do a screen share, or did I already? No, where is it? It is right here. All right. So I did a report recently about Great St. James. I don't know how many people knew that Epstein had a second island, an island nearly twice as big, or more than twice as big actually than Little St. James, upon which a bunch of illegal construction is now occurring. So at Little St. James, which is where all of the, we think, nefarious activities in the underground tunnels, etc., seem to be, and then Great St. James in the same area, and then at Corey's Digs, discovered Zorro Ranch. I didn't know anything about Zorro Ranch, which was purchased in 1993 by Epstein, we're told, from Governor Bruce King. And it just begs the question, what is Epstein other than a Mossad agent, perhaps, with his ties to Ghislaine Maxwell and her father? Your thoughts on Epstein? And I think this thing was nothing more than a honey trap for pedophiles.
I agree. I think he was a front. Many people find fault with you and myself when we say this. Many people believe he's one-off. He's just a one-off guy, and he just ran this leverage operation. I don't believe that. Organizations. By that, I mean intelligence agencies. If you look at his right-hand squeeze, this Ghislaine Maxwell, her daddy, I don't believe that apple fell far from her daddy's tree. Robert Maxwell, very tied to 3 intelligence agencies, CIA, MI6, and Mossad, Israeli intelligence. I believe Ghislaine, his daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, right-hand squeeze, if you will, of Jeffrey Epstein, I believe is probably Epstein's handler for these intelligence agencies, and Epstein's role was to entrap these individuals, people from Hollywood, Wall Street, business executives, and people politically in Washington and in legislatures around the country. Anyone that could later be used as leverage material to further advance the agenda of the intelligence agencies. Read that as deep state. And Epstein, I believe, tried to make some side money off of this. I think, I have a number of folks on Wall Street that I've spoken to, some folks in the NYPD, and said, hey, where did this guy make all his money? And because he's a whale. If you're a billionaire and you're on Wall Street, you're a whale. And to a person,
there's no record.
Right. All these people who are very connected, these contacts, they say to me, Dave, we have no idea. This guy is not showing up. I mean, it's not like he was the IPO of Lowe's or Home Depot was involved in that. It's not like he was known as this big hedge. I think what happened is he was a front. He obviously was part of that process. And then what he did, and again, this Les Wexner, the guy who started Limited Brands, Victoria's Secret, part of that, was supposedly funneled a lot of money into Epstein. We know Epstein sat on his foundational boards and ran a lot of his money and the like. And in fact, that huge townhouse mansion on what it was at 71st Street in Manhattan, this House of Horrors, whatever it was, that reportedly was bought by Les Wexner and then gifted to Epstein. And so I think the way he ran this is he ran it as a front, leverage, handing over that information. Ghislaine Maxwell was then funneling that to the intelligence agencies. But I believe here's what he did. He also worked a little side angle of his own. And I think the side angle was this. Hey, Mr. Billionaire? Yeah. Remember that party we had at my house? Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, remember that young girl you were with? Well, you know what? I got this video and I got these audio tapes. So here's the bottom line. If you don't want your wife to know this, if you don't want your board of directors to know this, if you don't want the media to know this, what you're going to do is you're going to transfer $1 billion into an account offshore that I'll run. And we're not going to do anything fancy with that money. I'm going to put it in a money market fund. But you're going to pay me $20 million a quarter to manage that. Otherwise, well, this is going to come out. And I think that was a little side angle he was working, in addition to him being a pedophile and a pervert, and in addition to him running this front operation for leverage against Hollywood moguls, political players, and people on Wall Street and business leaders. And I believe this is huge. Many people are discounting it. Sean, I know you believe it's huge. I believe it's huge. This is going to be pervasive. And I think this is one of the reasons why you're starting to see people distance themselves from certain players, as you mentioned, Hillary and Bill. We know Bill was on that Lolita Express going to Little St. James. He did a wonderful report on Big St. James. Corey Diggs has done a great report on Zorro Ranch. I got some independent information from somebody else about Zorro on some tax records. Initially it was in Epstein's name, and then in 2013, I believe it switched to a company that was based out of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. If you follow that down, that address, it's like a P.O. box, essentially. That's a front for an intelligence agency. That's all that is.
Yeah.
That's just a front. That's a blatant front. That's what my sources through Washington tell me. So the bottom line is that this runs really, really deep. And we know Billy Clinton was 26, 27 times on that Lolita Express. And Anthony Weiner's laptop, it ties into that. And Eric Prince has spoken about this on Breitbart News right before the election in 2016. I believe Hillary was mentioned on that on those flight logs 6 or 7 times going
That's
on
right.
the Express to pedophile island. I think this is why you're starting to see people distance themselves. And it would not surprise me, Sean, if we start to see some medical issues arise with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton in the near future.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. I just think it's very amusing to watch these horror media personalities, and that's what they are. The president is right. They're the enemy of the people. They continue to try. It's a joke. They continue to try to tie President Trump to Epstein while leaving out the truth that Epstein was disavowed by Trump 13 or 14 years ago. He was banned from Mar-a-Lago for inappropriately groping or grabbing or sexually assaulting someone that worked at Mar-a-Lago. And they'll leave that out. They'll continue to try to tie Trump to Epstein while omitting the flight logs showing that Bill was on the plane and actually went to Little St. James. You're right. I think more than 20 times. And Clinton Hillary was there, I think, six times, according to the flight logs. And by the way, now the pilots, I think, have been subpoenaed and they're being questioned about what they know.
And by the way, Donald Trump's name was never on a flight log with the Lolita Express going to that island.
No, you're right. He caught a lift home from Europe or something once.
No, from Florida to New York on one of the smaller planes with Epstein and his brother. No underage individuals were on that plane. And it wasn't the Lolita Express, never went to St. James Island. And in addition to that, remember in that lawsuit in 2009, the attorney came forward and said the only person who tried to help us with the prosecution of Epstein was Donald Trump.
That's right. All
And
right.
let's face it, Sean, let's face it. If Donald Trump had ever been on that Lolita Express going to St. James Island, we would have known about this years ago, because that would have been the first thing out of their mouths when he started to run for president.
Well, let's actually, all right, I wasn't going to go here, but let's just try to round out this part of the conversation before we move on to this geoengineering topic by reminding people that it was the Seth Rich leaked emails of John Podesta's very coded pedophilic language that led to the entire investigation into Comet Ping Pong and James Alefantis in this thing known as Pizzagate. As people re-review those emails coming from John Skippy Podesta using well-known FBI coded language that pedophiles use, language that made no sense to be used in his emails in many cases, I want people to recall those emails and that Pizzagate investigation as we talk about Epstein, as we talk about the plague of pedophilia, as we talk about Ghislaine Maxwell potentially being his human trafficking puppeteer, as we talk about the deep state and all of the people ensnared in this honeypot of pedophilia. It may be time to go back and revisit Pizzagate, because I'm telling you what, folks, what's going on in Washington, D.C., this thing known as Pizzagate, is as real as the pedogate issue with Jimmy Savile in the UK. It's been a plague on humanity running back decades and probably centuries. So if you want to say anything about that, Dave, go ahead, and then we'll turn our attention to geoengineering.
I agree with you, Sean. As this string is pulled on Epstein, this is not a short thread. This is a thread that's going to go miles. And as this thread is pulled, all of us who have been speaking about pedophile networks and human trafficking and human compromise and leverage and bribery and blackmail, who have been speaking about this for years, have been denigrated, have been ostracized from many quarters in society for us even speaking about it. I believe that we are all going to be proven correct, because this thread with Epstein goes deep. And this is not just going to involve political leaders on the left. This is going to involve political leaders across the entire spectrum, and business leaders across the spectrum, and folks in Hollywood across the spectrum. It's ugly. But the bottom line is, this is something that we have to face, and it's something we have to deal with. Because if we don't deal with this, we'll never be able to restore the rule of law in this country again.
Well, I think our president and Attorney General Barr and John Durham are working very hard to try to restore the republic. And for those who think that this president is just playing his role in some scheme to bring this country down, you're just simply not being intellectually honest. And for those who said, stand down and don't vote in the election because it's all rigged, you did not participate in this restoration of the republic. I just want to call you out for that, folks. Those of you who said stand down.
They do have a chance, because 2020 is coming.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to round this out by saying the reason I mentioned Comet Ping Pong is because it's not lost on me that James Alefantis was named by GQ magazine as being one of the 50th most powerful person in Washington, D.C., a pizza shop owner, long before anybody had heard the term Pizzagate. And I think that there might be some research worth doing there as it relates to Alefantis being the 50th most powerful man in Washington, D.C., not a senator, not a congressman, a pizza shop owner, who then we find out is related to all of these Podesta emails and Comet Ping Pong, et cetera, tied in with the DNC, because that's what they gave us with Epstein. He's a billionaire, he's a self-made man, and then we find out that's not true. So I think we can pull on some of those strings again, and now may be the time. I guess I would call on the DOJ to maybe do a little digging there. I'd like to know what happened to that Comet Ping Pong server, but I digress. Do you want to talk about geoengineering now? Because I'm seeing some wonderful things happening in the skies near where I live, and I can show you a few pictures here. We have Serial Brain 2 on YouTube. Well, Serial Brain 2 and these decodes. Guys, I take those with a real grain of salt, because there's so much good news to be had in these gematria decodes. So I take them with a large grain of salt. But Serial Brain 2 has indicated that the president has taken control of the skies, and the chemtrails issue is being shut down. Now, as I mentioned that, Dave, and I know you have some thoughts on this, let me go to my screen share and show you a picture I took today above my house. Okay, that's today, And now I got to stop the share and go back in. I want to show you a even prettier picture taken on Saturday. This is my daughter who is learning how to jump horses. I'm very proud of her. She's 16 years old, straight A student, which is quite a contrast to my two sons, both of which, let's just say ADHD is not a fun thing with my older son. But this is my daughter, and look at those skies, Dave. I haven't seen clouds like this on a regular basis since I was a kid.
I agree. It's interesting. You speak about geoengineering, and immediately the conspiracy flags come out and they start waving them in front of your face. A number of years ago, a 4-star general from the Air Force who was in charge of weather reconnaissance, who I knew, contacted me and said, "Dave, you need to start speaking about geoengineering because it's real." And suggested I actually get in touch with somebody by the name of Dane Wigington, who runs a great website, geoengineeringwatch.org. If folks haven't gone there, I encourage them to do so. And I've had Dane on regularly on my radio show as well. And the bottom line is that the skies where I live, I noticed, Sean, about a year ago, that there was far less cross-hatching occurring than had been occurring for many, many years before that. And then I noticed earlier this year that, and maybe it's pure coincidence, but whenever the president would leave the country, the cross-hatching would come back, not to the level it had been, but when he was out of the country, there'd be more cross-hatching occurring in the skies above. And then I noticed, Sean, after this July 4th holiday, starting around July 5th, I believe it was, all of a sudden, all the chemtrails, I haven't seen one. And that's been going, it was right after the July 4th holiday.
Now, I tweeted out about this several days ago, and I got a lot of responses. I asked people to tell me report what you're seeing. What are you seeing in your skies? And 90% of the replies were sunny blue skies and natural puffy clouds, which, we just don't see those when they're heavily chemtrailing. Now, in fairness, I did get a report, I think, from somewhere in Texas showing that they're being sprayed. I think one may be coming from California, if memory serves. But 90% of them were blue skies and people commenting that they haven't seen this in a very, very long time on a regular basis. So I just wanted to note this because it's SB2, these decodes, who claims that the president is taking control of the skies and is reducing or eliminating, hopefully, this chemtrailing problem.
Well, I can tell you that there's less, as I said, the chemtrails have been non-existent in our area. And I noticed it right after the July 4th holidays I mentioned. And my hope is that the president has gotten control of the program and has deep sixed it. And time will tell.
All right. The other thing I just wanted to say, though, is in regards to that, because it is one of these YouTube channels that does a very good job. I think the name of the channel is And We Know. And that's not Serial Brain 2. That's somebody who finds these Serial Brain 2 posts on the chans and then turns them into these videos. So that's where this information has come from. It's from a decode, a Serial Brain 2 decode, claiming that this is what happened. But it got me looking at the skies again, Dave, and being conscious of these beautiful blue sky days that, frankly, we don't get very much anymore. And I have seen a big reduction in what we'd call chemtrails in just the past 10 or 12 days since I've been paying attention to this closely. So leave your comments below, folks. Let us know what you're seeing. But that And We Know channel does a very good job. But like I said, I take the Serial Brain decodes with a very, very big grain of salt because some of that information just goes a bridge too far sometimes. I mean, it's just the gematria, the decodes, and it's all just this wonderful, wonderful news. But I'll tell you what, Dave, some really wonderful things are happening because the president, Donald Trump, sits in the Oval Office instead of the witch.
I agree with you, Sean, and I truly believe that if Hillary Clinton had become president, you and I would not be having this conversation today.
Oh, I wholeheartedly know that's true. I mean, can you imagine how bad it would be with her in the White House? Look how bad it is with Google and YouTube victimizing us already. I mean, with her to run cover for them, it would have been game over, not only just for the truth media, but for conservatives and libertarians. I think they probably would have started rounding us up. by now. And I don't say that really tongue in cheek. I'm actually being kind of literal if you think of, and I've reported on this, what the Weather Underground and Bill Ayers said they wanted to do. They wanted to round up 20 to 30 million Americans and put them in re-education camps, and those that couldn't be re-educated to the new ways, the communist ways, would be killed.
No, that's a point of fact. That's what he said.
That's 100% true.
People will think that's hyperbole. It is not.
100% true. All right. So let's finish up by reminding people how they can find your excellent information. And thank you so much for your generous allotment of time. You're always so kind to come on and talk with us for an hour. So Operation Freedom on YouTube, and you broadcast out of Michigan too. So tell people how they can catch you live.
So they can catch the live radio show. It's every Sunday, 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. All they have to do is go to davejanda.com, Janda, it's like panda with a J, davejanda.com, and hit the upper right-hand corner, and you hit listen, and you can stream the show live. It's free. In addition, we're available, as you mentioned, on our YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. I'm not prolific like you, Sean. I produce maybe 1-2 YouTubes a week. In addition to that, we have our davejanda.com platform where we upload information on the free side on a regular basis, but we have the subscription side, 30 cents a day, $9 a month, where we do extra shows, where people have access to all of our archives of all of our radio shows. They can have podcasts to our radio show if they miss it on Sunday. In addition, I do what's called a WTF geopolitical show where every Wednesday, where I present information from my sources that I've had developed over the past 30 years. I have our Insider Insight interview where we bring somebody forward, which we interview. This week, actually, I'm going to be interviewing Jimmy Boots, Jim Rothstein, NYPD former detective, ran the detective division for the NYPD for many, many years, and actually was in charge of the human trafficking investigation side and homicide and the like. And he has some incredible insights. I'll give you a quick one. I asked him about Donald Trump. And I said, Jim, you know him, you've dealt with him for decades. Any ties at all to these human trafficking pedophile networks? And his answer was, Donald Trump did associate with many women, but never kids and never minors. He was never involved in that. Jim is brutally honest about everything. And if there was something there with President Trump that the bought-off lamestream fake media tends to want to fan that flame, Jim says no way. Yeah. And he would know. So we do Insider Insight interviews, and we do that once a week. So people are welcome to join us on the free side, on the subscription side, and become a part of our Freedom family. We'd appreciate it.
Excellent. Yeah, Jimmy Boots has been interviewed by our friend Sarah Westall too, so that's that'll be a good one. I'll be looking for that. Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. I mean, there's just so much to talk about. We've really only scratched the surface, but we'll keep our eye on all of this, and maybe we can regroup again in another 4 or 6 weeks.
That would be great, Sean, and thank you very much for all that you do. You are truly the head of the spear when it comes to the freedom movement.
No, you always say that. That's too kind. I know. We're all in this mess together, man, and we can all push this boulder uphill. And you know what? I think we're reaching the tipping point where now the boulder is going to go downhill on its own, which will be a heck of a lot easier once we see these people perp walked and sent to Guantanamo or wherever the hell they're going, because they don't deserve to be free. I
agree with you. And I do believe the information that has been put out there recently by Joe DeGeneva, that some declassification of documents is coming very soon, and I think this is going to be significant.
Yeah, it's potentially Wednesday. We're having this conversation on Tuesday. I think I just saw him or heard him say potentially some new declass stuff, really important documents coming on Wednesday. So we'll keep our eye on that. Our guest has been Dave Janda, Operation Freedom on YouTube, davejanda.com. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Sean, for everything you do.
Thank you, sir. And guys, God bless you all. A special thanks to my patrons. You are truly, truly, truly keeping us in the fight for truth, as YouTube literally now demonetizes every single video I put up, even just the latest one on gold and silver in the economy. It took them 24 hours to review it, and they said, yes, it's fine for ads, but 24 hours have passed, so what does it matter at this point? A shout out to my patrons, and a shout out to those of you who have downloaded the Brave browser. If you want to take another bite out of Google, stop using Chrome and use the Brave browser. It's free. It's more than twice as fast as Google Chrome. It has a built-in ad blocker, and it won't spy on you. I'll leave the link below. You can download it, give it a try. I think you'll like it very much. And for real news 24/7, you guys can visit us at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda and mockingbird mainstream media lies 24/7. God bless you all. Bye-bye.